The Mark Thompson Show.
Put it together for a guy who is, he's forgotten more about politics than most of us will ever know. He is a remarkable dude. Michael Shure, everybody. Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
What's up? What's up, Michael Shure?
Well, I'm feeling freed of the shackles of Jim Avila. It's nice.
Yes, that's right. It's all you today. That's right.
We're just here to talk about Jim, right?
Well, we hope Jim actually under the weather, but we hope he feels better soon. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought it was.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Damn.
Yeah, Jim's in the ER right now, but nice that we can make fun of him.
Play the major announcement.
All right. So, Michael, where to begin? I want to start just because you can spin the wheel and start in so many different places with this train derailment, the toxic train derailment. Because in that story, and this is something that I've visited with our audience on this show day after day, I think you see so much wrapped up in the story that is wrong with our politics, with our regulatory process. There's so much wrapped up in this story, and it's still unfolding.
Yeah, and of course, like any story anywhere, it becomes politicized. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida wrote a letter to the president yesterday asking for the president to demand the resignation of Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation. So the blame game happens. It doesn't just happen in the media. It happens in politics because there's hate to be made over it. And the Republicans, are not Buttigieg fans, and they look down the pike a little bit, and they see, do people still say pike? Well, this guy.
They do now. You're bringing pike back.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear. They look down the pike and they see Buttigieg as a possible presidential candidate once again.
Oh, I see.
Okay, here's a way to get him in his knees when things are not going well, and they can find something to pin on him. They have several things that the Republicans do want to pin on him, but this is the most recent, and it does. It shows a lot of dysfunction. It shows that even what seemed like the simplest of things, a train, carrying cargo passing through town, has so many fingers in the stew there, and that's the problem that we see with regulation. And I think
those fingers are bought and paid for, Michael. I mean, a lot of the way, huh?
Yeah, all the way, and some for good reason. In that, there is an effort right now to get our supply chain back. So doing everything in an expeditious way, but is important, and that's not what caused this accident in Ohio. But you see what urgency does as well, and that there's a lack of oversight, and there's a, hey, just get this through type of mentality. But I'm not saying that that's what happened here in Ohio, nor have I heard anyone say it, but that's a contributing factor to what the environment is like in transportation and in cargo transportation.
Yeah, expeditious is a ding word. I do think that the reclassification of many of these toxic chemicals, such that communities don't even know that they're passing through those areas. Essentially, what happened is about 10 years ago, there was a reclassification, right, of these toxic chemicals. I mean, I'm chuckling because it's just such a, it's the American way. A money-filled system bought a reclassification of these chemicals, such that now essentially I shouldn't say the only, but one of the few. The system is designed to showcase and focus on when oil is being passed through various communities on rail. Not so much with these deadly chemicals. That was the first thing they did. And of course, the braking system was the second thing. They, instead of the air brakes, they could have had the brakes upgraded, but they didn't do that. Again, they rolled that back during the Trump administration.
Yeah. And when big business is paying for lack of regulation, and big business is paying to expedite things, and big business is saying, let's take X, Y, and Z out of the equation here so we can get things done. This is what happens. This is why you have oversight. This is why you have regulation. This is why you have environmentalists and the EPA at the table in a lot of these decisions, fighting against big business. And this is all laid bare here. And look, I mean, people don't know this is happening, right? So you hear the reason that they fought so hard to make sure that oil was flagged when it was going through is oil, it's about the environmental and the spill and the drinking water and all of that. Well, the same hazards happen when methane gas or other gases are going through. And even if it's not tangible and we can't picture what that looks like in our mind, you see an explosion like this and you know what it can do. And it just by chance it happened in Ohio. The train could have kept going to Indiana. It happens in Indiana. It goes to Illinois, the same thing. I mean, that's what we're looking at here. And I don't know if it was eastbound or westbound, frankly.
Yeah, no, but to your point, the spillover literally is going to those states you mentioned, and it's gone into Pennsylvania, into the Mississippi River. I mean, yeah,
it's Russian roulette too, where it happens, right? I mean,
right, and the toxification. Well, we've seen fish and wildlife dying by the scores, and so before we move on from this, I want to mention the last thing that I've talked about on this show, and that is the way we allow corporate America and business in this case, I'm talking about the train company and chemical companies, to get 100% of their profits, and they get tax breaks of all sort. But when this kind of thing happens, there is no demand. Now you're finally hearing it, Michael, and I wanted to get to this. Is the political climate changing in this regard? You're finally hearing the clamor for how come you guys, the chemical companies, the railroad companies, don't help us in these communities clean this up and remediate this situation? Typically, they leave it to the EPA, the feds, and these communities to do it on their own.
We hate government. We hate government. Stop governing us. Stop giving oversight. Oh, hey, can you clean up this mess for us? I mean, it's basic. It's laid bare, and people are angry about it for a moment, and then it kind of goes away. But because these things are momentary, and the government does come in and does do the cleanup and does do the remediation to the best of their ability, and these agencies do that as well. So it's very, very difficult to sustain the outrage. But this might work, and this might work in Ohio, a place that is a political, very, very tight political and a politically astute state. It may work that way.
I want to move on to one of the other stories, and that was associated and is associated with what was the Biden press conference yesterday, his statement. Albert, do you have that? You want to run a little bit of this is Biden yesterday talking about the balloon shoot down.
We don't yet know exactly what these three objects were, but nothing right now suggests they were related to China's spy balloon program or that they were surveillance vehicles from any other country. The intelligence community's current assessment is that these three objects were most likely balloons tied to private companies, recreation or research institutions studying weather or conducting other scientific research.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Albert. He basically, and he does this thing there. We don't have to hear it. And there's such a premium on this in our society, the gunslinger society that we grow up in. That I want to be clear: if anything threatens American airspace, I'm going to shoot it down. That's what he literally said that, Michael. So there's an aspect of of cowboy diplomacy going on, if you will, or cowboy posturing. But there is we said on this show that we thought it might be hobbyist balloons. We did note that. Yeah. I wonder what your take is on this. We talked a little bit about it last week, and to be fair, you and Avila both said, hey, this is really being blown up as a bigger thing than it should be.
Yeah, and I continue to agree.
Yeah, and the news bore it out. Yeah,
at worst, if they shot down hobby balloons, it's too bad, and it was misguided, maybe. But it's not. It's a little bit of no harm, no foul. Unless you're the balloon owner, and they can figure that out later. But it's and there's this sort of. I think it's Ronald Reagan, when he was president in the 80s, sort of adopted a little of the old Teddy Roosevelt kind of posture as president. And the what you just said and what President Biden did and what presidents since Reagan have tried to do is show that sort of American bravado. Don't mess with our skies or we'll shoot you out of the skies type of thing. It works. It's worked. I don't know if it's grown old, and I don't think that people are seeking that particularly now. But I don't think, I do think when we look back at the Biden years in office, whenever that is, I don't think this is going to be a big part of that narrative.
It is funny that no one's claimed the stuff. I think that's interesting that one Illinois hobbyist group did step up and said, "Hey, I think that's our balloon." But apart from that, this whole situation has 10-foot pole marks all over it.
Right. And it also minimizes what the only thing that could be important or fascinating about this, which is the Chinese balloons that really did exist, and that there's a spy balloon program, and that we've learned about that, even if we kind of knew it in the recess or could imagine it, at least in the recesses of our mind. So now it's just a bunch of balloons in the air, and that seems to matter less to the public anyway.
That's a great point as well. And even Biden yesterday noted, hey, we've kind of retuned our radar. And so we're picking up on more of this stuff. So it's out there. Still, we scramble the fighters and shoot the stuff down now. And I wonder, just before we move from this, how much of that kind of thing, because you see it happen in military conflicts of all sort, is motivated by wanting to minimize sort of political exposure. If you look too weak, if you're letting this stuff go,
Of course it is, and who would have ever thought that shooting down balloons would sort of would dictate how strong you would look? It's also an analog to these classified documents, right? We kept finding classified documents, and we keep finding balloons. But the Trump classified document and documents and the way he handled it and his team handled it is still important. So too are those Chinese balloons, but they've kind of been minimized by the hobbyist balloons and the fact that you found classified documents under every rock you turned over in a former president or vice president's home.
When we come back, I want to take a quick break. I want to talk to you about the revelations in this Dominion lawsuit case. This is the case in which, of course, everyone will recall, and I mentioned it yesterday, this company that's involved in counting votes was smeared by right-wing media and suggesting that they were flipping votes top of ticket from Trump to Biden, and that Trump had actually, been getting those votes. So there are revelations coming from this trial, depositions, text messages. It's insane. And the revelations are around Fox News and Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson and what they were actually saying at the time about this behind the scenes. I want to talk with Michael Shure about that when we continue. So stay where you are, Michael, if you would, please. Mark Thompson. Let's get back to Michael Shure. Michael, I did want to get to this Dominion lawsuit. I just think it's great. I mean, again, it's great for the revelations and the stuff that we knew that now we're finding out everybody knew. I mean, no one who pushed the story about this top-of-ticket computer flip that was happening in Dominion software, no one believed it. And you're seeing this now through depositions and through court testimony that has been introduced in their lawsuit against Fox News Channel.
I mean, it's, like you say, it's shocking, but it's not shocking, right? And I don't think anybody's surprised to know that there was dissent within the walls of Fox, and not even, I guess that there was dissent, maybe a little surprising, but that they knew what was, in fact, the truth, which was there was not an election fraud, and this was not a stolen election, but they were going with it from the top down, and it's so incriminating. But here's the thing, right? We've seen incriminating now for the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right? With Donald Trump, all the way through. And incriminating hasn't yet mattered. Nobody's been marched off in handcuffs. Nobody's really lost their job of great significance. And so when does incriminating matter? Well, incriminating matters certainly in this defamation lawsuit. And it's going to matter to Dominion, and it's going to matter in terms of spreading what is true and what is real, and how people can sort of falsify this information. When in fact the fake news that the former president had been bemoaning for years is staring us in the face right now. This is the fake news, and it's there. It's right in front of us, and people from within those walls are saying it.
Yeah, that's so great. Well, it was sort of the dance that we were familiar with. They say fake news when the reality is they're concocting fake news of their own. And just to put a specific face on it, they were concerned with ratings dropping suddenly after the election. When Trump lost the election, the ratings on Fox fell off a cliff. And to handle that, to stop that bleeding, they were looking desperately for anything they could find. And they latched onto this story. And in court testimony, you're seeing the Washington managing editor at Fox, a guy named Bill Salmon, said, quote, it's remarkable how weak ratings make good journalists do bad things. Privately, network executives stewed over the hit to Fox News' brand. Hannity texted Carlson that calling Arizona for Biden had destroyed a brand that took 25 years to build, and the damage could be incalculable, Carlson said in return. So they were concerned. I mean, it's funny, the back and forth and Laura Ingraham is on these as well, all of their stars. They were concerned with the fact that Fox had called the election. Like, don't call it, because the minute you call it, the viewers are going to go away. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And Bill Salmon was a former journalist. He was with the Washington Examiner. I mean, you can judge for yourself.
Yeah, that's a little right-wing paper, yeah.
Where he worked, and his other controversy had to do with renaming, like within Fox, you could never call it healthcare. You could never call it Obamacare. You had to call it government-run healthcare. And that was to make people sour on the idea of healthcare reform. So it's been a manipulation with Bill Salmon from the very get-go, which is why he ascended at this place, this network of mendacity from the very beginning. It's 25 years of embarrassing history at Fox News, and they want to talk about the 25 years. So it's great and it's fun and it's enlightening, but it has to matter.
Right.
And I don't know, it can only matter here in this civil lawsuit of defamation to a certain degree. It's not going to take Fox off the air. As a matter of fact, Newsmax lost out on that because they were pulled off the air on DirecTV, and Fox was eventually the winner in that. And you were talking about ratings falling off a cliff. Well, a lot of these people who were looking for their truth, the truth that they wanted to find, were finding it on Newsmax, even though, of course, it wasn't true.
That's a great summary of the sort of the state of things and what happened. And you're right. It's what sticks, and what sticking means. I've often said, and right away after this lawsuit was launched, there are demonstrable damages here. There are real damages to Dominion voting machines. And the reason, and to Dominion as a brand, I mean, that is their world. It's not just America. This technology is exported for other elections. All of a sudden, there's this contagion that is put out there that their machines are rigged. It's not true.
Right.
And they want to go to court to show the real damage is done. I think these are billions of dollars Fox is exposed to. And that's why, as Michael has said, they've gone all the way to the top. I love that you mentioned that, because Rupert Murdoch's been deposed in this entire thing. He was in on it too.
Yeah, he was telling people to focus on Georgia and politicize it rather than focus on other parts of Arizona. So, well, let's leave that behind us now. We got to go to Georgia and make sure, basically, we win Georgia. He's the news. We don't win, right? I mean, and that's the other thing. Now the onus is, now that we know all of this, or we surmised it before, the onus is on the rest of media to call them out and not be afraid to. People talk about corporate media like this monolith. It isn't in that way, but there are people I know, there are reporters, look, I'm probably among them, and who are afraid to criticize it often, because it might mean that, hey, look, somebody who works for Fox may work for a network I work for one day, and I don't want to piss them off now.
That's interesting.
and that, I'm not saying I'm that's not a big part of my day, but
right.
If it exists even in my mind, it must exist in big ways for big, powerful people in news. And that's where you get this kind of one monolith of corporate media, because nobody's stepping on Fox as hard as they need to. Maybe they will later. You have pundits doing it. You have general public. I'm sure Twitter is full of it. But you should have reporters, honest to God reporters, say they are embarrassed to be in the room with a Fox News reporter, embarrassed that they get credentialed for things at the White House and at debates and at breaking news that's political. I don't know. It needs to go farther than just this.
There's been a normalization. I completely agree. And even in that White House press room to which you refer, there is every manner of Fox News Channel knockoff that is permitted time with ridiculous questions. I mean, I watch some of that stuff and I go, come on, guys, let's, you know.
I mean, that's all of the First Amendment, but you take the, you know, it's like you take the welfare cheats, but you're not going to do away with welfare, right? I mean, so it's a small price to pay. But by the same token, the other reporters in that room should say to the Fox News correspondent, hey, what the hell? You know, they should call them out publicly, embed it in a question to whoever they're speaking to.
Mendacity is a ding word. You're right. Thank you, whoever said that. I'm sorry. I know we're wrapping up. You can get back to your job as a foreman at a construction site or whatever's going on in the background. We love that you spent time with us. And I'm glad you met. I think you're exactly right, though. This I just want to underscore what you're saying. This should actually be reported on other network newscasts. I mean, it has to be in the world of television. It should be reported in other forums beyond just the specific YouTube channels that have, you know, perhaps an audience that wants to hear it. Mainstream media, in other words, can't let down this story.
No, because it looks bad to all of us. Yeah,
it does. Pal, I love that you spent time with us. I know, you know, you have to move some stuff around to be here, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for you. You moved me to the earlier slot. That's going to disappoint those 11:05 fans, but I'm sorry.
They can find you. That's the beauty of this platform. Michael Shure, everybody, find him on TYT and dinging his way to another exotic port of call. See you, Michael Shure. Thank you, my friend. Yeah. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.